And Jesus comes with this invitation and he's saying, listen, come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Number one this morning, the invitation of Jesus of a restoring relationship for those in the rat race. For those in the rat race, a restoring relationship, an invitation, a call. God does not just say, just command you and tell you to do something. There's an invitation here. And in an invitation, He looks across the room. He looks across the city. He looks across the church. He looks across His people. And He says, listen, you are involved in this day-to-day life. And I can see two things that are around you just now. And He's watching. He says, I look at you and I can see the labor and the loads and the burdens. Watch those. Is Jesus right? We chase our tails and run the rat race all the time. And we get back. And when we get back, Jesus is looking and saying, I can see the effects of the labor. I can see the toil it's showing on your face. Maybe sometimes whispering, I can see the toil it's showing on the way you're talking to your child. I can see the toil, how you spoke to your wife just now. I can see the effects of the toil. I don't know, Darren, but toil is exhausting. And the invitation of Jesus is for a people that toil and work hard. Idleness in the Bible is absolutely sinful. But on the opposite side is an engagement with toil, with work. And so we begin to believe everything about our future and our destiny is dependent on the work of our hands. And you ride across the city of Bangalore, work is worship, work is worship, work is worship. And the God of the Bible looks at you and me and says, yeah, that's the introduction, but let me take you to the grand finale, your rest. And what you have, the restoration, is the greatest act of worship that I will bring when I come to you. When my presence rests upon you, hallelujah. When the presence rests, He says there's rest. I mean, look at what death is called in the Bible. Rest from the labor. And Jesus is kind of looking and saying, no, I'm not talking about that rest just now. Don't wait for them to put you into the box and then say, now he's resting in the presence of the Lord. He wants you and me to go every night to be able to lay down, to lie down, and to be able to say, I'm resting in the presence of God. And He's looking at these things and He says, I can see the toil. I can see the hard work. I can see what it does. And He's calling His people and He's telling them, He says, I can see the heavy loads. And you're looking and you're saying, God, I had such a bad day in work and everything was so difficult and I'm tired. My brain is tired. My hand is tired. Everything about me is tired. And you get home and you start your car. You put on the engine, and then as you're driving home, you're suddenly looking and saying, I don't mind going back to work just now. I know what my child's going through. Just now my home is not home, it's a place of warfare. And sometimes you just want to jam the brake and turn around and head back in the opposite direction. Sometimes even though it's a 2-hour ride home, every moment you're getting closer to home, sometimes you know what burdens await you. Sometimes you know what challenges await you at home. Sometimes you know what things are going out of control over there. And people are lost between toil and the rigor of toil and the fact that they are exhausted with toil. And after all that toil, they carry the burdens with them. And they're going back home. I don't know how to deal with that payment. I don't know how to deal with that loan I got to repay. I don't know how to deal with that sickness. And we all have different things. And you're probably driving home and saying, God, my mom's home and my dad's sick and this is what's happening and my child is going through this, and you carry in you a tiredness that's coming from the toil, and you're carrying with you the burdens and the loads that bear you down. And Jesus is looking to a people like that and saying, I have an invitation. I have an invitation. What's the invitation? Where can I get more loans? No. Come to me, all who are weary from the toil. Come to me, all who have burdens and loads upon your backs. Come to me. And I want to place that before you this morning. You look into the different things written by Solomon, and in several verses he would say, in Ecclesiastes 4 verse 4, he says, I saw that all toil and all achievement spring from one person's enemy, and this too is meaningless. It is chasing after the wind. If you think your toil is going to establish you and you will stand as a wonderful man, a woman of God, if you think, my beloved ones, as you're looking at these verses, let it run in your minds just now. He looks and says in chapter 4 verse 6, better one handful of tranquility than two handfuls with toil and chasing after the wind. Again in Ecclesiastes chapter 4 verse 8, he says, there was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toils, yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable, meaningless business. Again, he says in Ecclesiastes 5:15, everyone comes naked from their mother's womb. Everyone come and so they depart. They take nothing from their toil, and that they can carry in their hands. This too is grievous. It's a toil for the wind. Ecclesiastes 6:1, everyone's toil is for the mouth, yet the appetite is never satisfied. Again, he says in Ecclesiastes 10:15, the toil of fools wearies them. They do not know the way to the town. Oh. Wow. If you are hoping to make it in life because of your toil, meet the guy in the Bible called the most wisest guy and wisest king that ever lived. And he'll tell you what is in the underprint of toil that you and I never consider. Watch what he tells you in terms of heavy loads. He says, I applied my mind to study, to explore wisdom and all that is done under heaven. What a heavy burden God has laid on the human race. Oh my goodness. I've seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless or chasing after the wind. I said to myself, look, I've grown. I've increased in wisdom more than anybody else who has ruled. I've experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this too is a chasing after the wind. The load, the burdens never let go. Oh, you would think sometimes if I got a PhD, everything is done. And he's telling you, he says, I got a PhD. With the PhD, there came much grief. And I don't know about you, but it seems like the more you have, the more the burdens. The more the burdens. The more the toil to get you, the more you have, and the more the burdens. He's writing in another place, he says, laughter, I said, is madness, and what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine, embracing folly. My mind is still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what is good for people to do under the heavens during their few days. I undertook great projects. I built houses. I made gardens and parks. I planted all kinds of fruit. I made reservoirs. I brought male and female servants and had slaves. I also owned more herds and flock than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself, the treasure of kings and provinces. I became great and famous more than anyone else. You know, I got that thing that I was looking for. I wanted to be a director of a company. I wanted to be a team lead. I wanted wanted to be this, I wanted. He says, I got that. I denied myself nothing my eye desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, that was a reward for my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was a burden on my back that I called meaninglessness. Wow, look at him. He's looking and saying, the faith of a fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain in being wise? I said to myself, this too is meaningless. For the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have already come when both will be forgotten. Like the fool, the wise will also die. So I hated life because the work which I done under the sun was grievous to me. All this is meaningless, chasing after the wind. Ecclesiastes 2 verse 6. To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, happiness. To the sinner, he gives the task of gathering, storing wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. The end result of everything that he's saying, so often we find after all the hard work, is discouragement, disappointment, destructions under the influence of the pressures of life, dominated by toils and burdens. Catch what I'm saying this morning. Catch where we are going this morning. Because my beloved ones, it's only Jesus that can do a crazy thing. And when you're looking at Jesus, He's the only one who can look at you and say, I have an invitation. And can you bring your toils? Can you bring your burdens? And I can, in the same circle, bring my rest.